The camera flashes were blinding, and the roar of the crowd deafening as Callahan stepped out of his sleek black Bentley. The tech mogul's usually confident smile was nowhere to be seen as he made his way toward the entrance of Carson Media headquarters. His jaw was set in a hard line, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses despite the overcast Seattle day. The scandal that had broken yesterday accusations from his ex-fiancée, claiming he had stolen her startup idea and built his billion-dollar empire on it, had sent shockwaves through the business world. "Mr. Callahan, is it true you stole the intellectual property?" shouted a reporter, thrusting a microphone toward him. "Finn, did you really betray Vanessa? Did you know the lawsuit seeks half your fortune?" The questions came like bullets, each one striking with precision. Finn kept walking, his security team forming a human barrier between him and the media frenzy. At 34, he'd built NeuroSync Technologies from nothing into a $4.2 billion company that revolutionized how artificial intelligence interfaced with human learning. Now, everything he'd worked for was being questioned. On the periphery of the chaos stood Daisy Howard, clutching her press badge and observing the scene with a frown. As a technology correspondent for the Seattle Chronicle, she'd been covering Callahan's meteoric rise for 3 years. Unlike the vultures around her, she wasn't convinced by the story Vanessa Miller was selling. "Absolutely shameful," muttered a reporter beside her, readying another pointed question. "Guys like him think they can take whatever they want." Daisy couldn't hold her tongue. "Have you actually looked at the timeline?" Callahan was developing neural interface technology for years before he even met Vanessa. Her startup was in social media analytics. The reporter gave her a condescending look. "Wake up, Howard. Rich guys stealing ideas is the oldest story in tech." "Maybe," Daisy replied, "but journalism based on assumptions rather than facts is the oldest mistake in reporting." She turned away, disgusted by the feeding frenzy. As a journalist who prided herself on thoroughness, the rush to judgment bothered her deeply. She'd interviewed Callahan 3 times over the years and had spent months researching his company for a feature article. The accusations simply didn't align with what she knew. Finn disappeared inside the building, the glass doors closing behind him like a shield. Though he hadn't heard Daisy's defense, the exchange had been captured by a nearby camera crew. By evening, the clip had gone viral. Daisy was reviewing her notes for an upcoming article when her editor, Marcus, appeared at her desk. "You've become quite the sensation," he said, dropping a tablet in front of her. On the screen was her face, defending Callahan against the tide of accusation. "Oh God," she groaned, pushing her copper hair behind her ears. "That was just me being irritated at lazy reporting." "Well, your irritation has over 2 million views. Callahan's PR team has been calling. They want to talk to you." Daisy looked up sharply. "About what?" "They didn't say, but I'm guessing it has something to do with you being the only journalist in Seattle not trying to crucify him." Marcus leaned against her desk. "This could be an opportunity for an exclusive. The man hasn't given a formal interview since the allegations broke." Daisy bit her lip. "I wasn't defending him because I think he's innocent. I just think everyone deserves fair treatment until the facts are clear." "Then get the facts," Marcus challenged. "Talk to him." That evening, Daisy found herself sitting in the lobby of NeuroSync's headquarters, a sleek building overlooking Elliott Bay. She had expected to meet with a PR representative, not Callahan himself. Yet here she was, being escorted by a stern-faced assistant into the elevator that would take her to the top floor. When the doors opened directly into his office, Daisy was struck by the contrast between the man she saw and the confident tech titan she'd interviewed before. Finn stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette framed by the city lights. He looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that seeped into one's bones. "Miss Howard," he said, turning to face her. His voice was deep but strained. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Callahan," she replied, stepping forward to shake his hand. His grip was firm, but she noticed a slight tremor. I was surprised to receive your invitation. Please call me Finn. He gestured to a seating area with modern leather chairs. Would you like something to drink? Just water, thank you. As he poured 2 glasses, Daisy noticed how his usually immaculate appearance had slipped. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and his blue button-down shirt had lost its crispness. I saw the clip, he said finally, handing her a glass. You defended me when no one else would. Daisy accepted the water. I wouldn't call it defending. I just believe in examining facts before forming conclusions. A small smile touched his lips, a rare quality these days. He sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. The allegations are false. I never stole Vanessa's idea. NeuroSync was already in development long before we met. Then why isn't your legal team shutting this down? Finn ran a hand through his hair. Because she's crafted a narrative that's difficult to disprove in the court of public opinion. We dated for 8 months. She visited my lab, saw early prototypes. Now she's claiming those were based on concepts she shared with me in private conversations. And were they? No. His blue eyes locked with hers, intense and unwavering. I've spent my entire adult life developing neural interface technology. What Vanessa has done is take what she saw and retroactively claim ownership. Daisy studied him, her journalist's instincts working overtime. Why are you telling me this? You have an entire PR team. Because you questioned the narrative when it would have been easier to join the pile-on. He took a drink of water. And because I've read your work. You're thorough, fair, and you understand tech well enough to see the inconsistencies in her claims. What exactly are you proposing? Exclusive access. I'll show you everything my original research, development timelines, patent applications dating back to my graduate work. You can speak to my team, see our labs. If you still think I'm a thief after that, write it, but if not. You want me to clear your name, Daisy finished. I want the truth to be told, whatever it is. There was a vulnerability in his voice that surprised her. Daisy considered his offer. This could be the biggest story of her career or a carefully orchestrated manipulation. I'll need complete independence, no editorial control from your team. Agreed. And I'll need to speak with Vanessa as well to get her side directly. Finn's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Fair enough. Then I accept, Daisy said, extending her hand. As they shook on it, neither realized they were setting in motion something that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, Daisy arrived at NeuroSync headquarters early, notepad and recorder in hand. Finn met her in the lobby, looking marginally more put together than the previous evening. I hope you're ready for a deep dive into neural interface technology, he said, handing her a visitor badge. I did my homework, she replied, clipping the badge to her blazer. He led her through security and into a private elevator. We'll start with the R&D labs, then my original research notes, and end with interviews with the development team. The day was intensive. Daisy watched demonstrations of technology that seemed pulled from science fiction interfaces that allowed direct neural communication with computers, adaptive learning algorithms that responded to thought patterns, rehabilitation systems helping stroke victims regain motor control. What struck her most, however, was the way the team spoke about Finn. There was genuine respect in their voices, not the cautious deference often shown to powerful bosses. Finn was working on these concepts when we were still in grad school together, explained Dr. Alina Reyes, NeuroSync's head of research. I remember him sketching the first prototype on napkins at 3 a.m. in our university's cafeteria. This was years before he met Vanessa. By late afternoon, Daisy had filled 3 notebooks with information. Finn had been transparent, answering her increasingly technical questions with patience. As they walked back toward his office, she felt her initial skepticism wavering. One last thing I want to show you, Finn said, leading her into a small conference room. He pulled up a digital timeline on the wall screen, showing the evolution of NeuroSync's core technology. Here's the patent application I filed 5 years ago, he said, highlighting a document. "And here's the paper I published in Neuroscience Quarterly 2 years before that." Daisy scanned the material. "And when did you meet Vanessa?" "Here," he said, pointing to a date barely 18 months ago. "We met at a tech conference in San Francisco. Her company was developing social media analytics software completely unrelated to neural interfaces." The evidence was compelling. Either Finn was executing an elaborate deception or Vanessa's claims were fabricated. "Why would she do this?" Daisy asked. Finn's expression darkened. "Money, revenge, publicity for her struggling startup, take your pick." He hesitated. "When I ended our engagement 3 months ago, she didn't take it well. You broke up with her." "Yes, things weren't working between us. We wanted different things." He looked away. "A week later, her company's funding fell through. 2 weeks after that, I was served with lawsuit papers." Daisy made notes, mind racing. "I'll need to verify everything independently." "I wouldn't expect anything less." As they wrapped up, Finn walked her to the elevator. "Thank you for taking the time to look beyond the headlines." "I haven't written anything yet," she reminded him. "I know." "But you listened." His voice softened. "That's more than most people have done." For a moment they stood in silence, the air between them charged with something neither was prepared to acknowledge. "I should go," Daisy said finally, stepping into the elevator. "Will you let me know what you find out from Vanessa?" "Of course." As the doors closed, Daisy caught herself studying his face, the concerned furrow of his brow, the subtle cleft in his chin, the way his eyes seemed to hold hers until the last possible second. She shook her head, reminding herself to maintain professional boundaries. This was a story, nothing more. Securing an interview with Vanessa Miller proved challenging. After multiple requests through her publicist, Daisy finally received an invitation to meet at an upscale restaurant in downtown Seattle. Vanessa was everything Finn wasn't in this crisis: polished, composed, and seemingly unbothered by the controversy. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, her designer outfit immaculate. "I appreciate you making time to speak with me," Daisy began after they'd ordered. "Of course, though I'm surprised the Chronicle is interested in rehashing old news." Vanessa's smile was practiced. "The facts are already public record in the court filings. I'm interested in hearing directly from you about the development of the technology you claim Finn appropriated." Vanessa sipped her water. "I was developing adaptive neural interfaces for personalized learning environments. During our relationship, I shared my research with Finn. He was supportive, or so I thought." Her voice took on a wounded quality. 6 months later, NeuroSync announced their groundbreaking new direction identical to my concept. "But NeuroSync was already working in neural interfaces before you met." "Basic interfaces, yes. My innovation was in the adaptive learning algorithms, the technology that made his company worth billions." She leaned forward. "Finn is very charming, Miss Howard. He's also very calculating." Throughout the interview, Daisy pressed for specifics: dates, documentation, witnesses. Vanessa's answers became increasingly vague. "Most of our discussions were private," she explained, "but I have notes from our conversations that my legal team has submitted as evidence." When Daisy requested to see these notes, Vanessa demurred. "They're part of ongoing litigation. My attorney would need to approve that." By the end of the lunch, Daisy had more questions than answers. Vanessa's timeline had inconsistencies, and her technical descriptions lacked the depth of someone who had actually developed the technology. "One last question," Daisy said as they prepared to leave. "Why did you and Finn break up?" Something flickered across Vanessa's perfect composure, a momentary crack. "He claimed we wanted different things." Her laugh was brittle. "What he wanted was to discard me after taking what was valuable." On the walk back to her office, Daisy's mind raced. The professional part of her was piecing together the story, the contradictions, the evidence, the motivations. But another part kept returning to Finn's tired eyes and the genuine pain she'd seen there. She spent the next 3 days verifying information, reviewing patent filings, and interviewing former colleagues of both Finn and Vanessa. The picture that emerged supported Finn's version of events. Vanessa's notes from their conversations, which her attorney finally provided, were vague and could have been written after the fact. When Daisy called Finn to share her findings, his relief was palpable even through the phone. "I'd like to discuss this in person," she said. "There are a few remaining questions I need to clarify." "Of course, my office," Daisy hesitated. "Actually, I was thinking somewhere less formal. The media stakeout at your building makes private conversations difficult." "True," he paused. "There's a small cafe near Cary Park. It's quiet, and the owner values privacy." They agreed to meet that evening. Daisy told herself the flutter in her stomach was professional anticipation at breaking a significant story, not a reaction to seeing Finn again. The cafe was tucked away on a residential street with a view of the Seattle skyline through its windows. When Daisy arrived, Finn was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 mugs of coffee. "I hope you don't mind," he said as she sat down. "The owner makes the best Americano in the city." "Thank you." She took a sip, surprised by the complex flavor. "You were right. About the coffee or about Vanessa?" His smile was cautious. "Both, it seems." Daisy pulled out her notes. "I've verified your timeline. The patent applications, the research papers, the witness accounts, they all support your version of events." The tension visibly drained from Finn's shoulders. "And Vanessa's evidence? Circumstantial at best. Her technical descriptions don't hold up to scrutiny, and her timeline has significant inconsistencies." Daisy met his eyes. "I believe you didn't steal her work." Finn exhaled slowly. "Thank you for taking the time to investigate properly. It's my job." "No, your job would have been to write what everyone else was writing. You went further." They fell into conversation that gradually shifted from the case to technology in general, then to books, films, and shared interests. Daisy discovered that, beneath the polished tech CEO, was a person with genuine passions and surprising vulnerability. "What made you become a journalist?" he asked after they'd ordered a second round of coffee. "I've always been curious about how things work, especially why people do what they do." She smiled. "My father was an engineer, my mother a novelist. I guess I'm the intersection of analytical thinking and storytelling." "That explains your writing style. It's technical but accessible." Daisy raised an eyebrow. "You've read my work beyond the articles about your company." "I may have done some research after you defended me to that reporter." He looked slightly embarrassed. "Your series on ethical implications of AI was particularly thoughtful." The conversation flowed easily, and Daisy found herself laughing more than she had in months. When she glanced at her watch, she was shocked to find 3 hours had passed. "I should probably go," she said reluctantly. "I need to finish this article for tomorrow's deadline." Finn nodded. "Of course. Can I walk you to your car?" The night air was cool as they strolled down the hill. Their hands brushed accidentally, sending an unexpected current up Daisy's arm. She tucked her hand into her pocket, confused by her reaction. At her car, she turned to face him. "The article will run tomorrow. It presents the facts as I found them, which largely exonerate you." "That's all I asked for," he hesitated. "Would it be inappropriate to ask if we could have coffee again sometime? Not for the article, just as people who enjoy each other's company." Daisy knew the professional answer would be yes, it would be inappropriate. But something in his expression, hopeful yet prepared for rejection, made her pause. "Let's see how the article reception goes first," she said diplomatically. "My credibility needs to remain intact." He nodded, understanding the unspoken concern. "Fair enough." As she drove home, Daisy couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted that evening, something beyond the story she was writing. The article was published the next morning under the headline, "Neurosync Allegations, a Timeline of Innovation vs. Claims of Theft." It methodically outlined the evidence, highlighting the inconsistencies in Vanessa's claims and the documented history of Finn's work. By noon, it was the most read piece on the Chronicle's website. By evening, national news outlets were citing it. Vanessa's team released a statement calling the article biased and incomplete. But multiple tech journals were already confirming Daisy's findings independently. 3 days later, Vanessa's attorney requested a private meeting with Finn's legal team. The lawsuit was quietly withdrawn a week after that. When the news broke that the case had been settled, Daisy received a text from Finn. "Thank you for changing my life. Coffee sometime?" She stared at the message, her thumbs hovering over the keyboard. The professional complication had been removed, her article had been vindicated, her reporting praised. But a new complication had emerged, her growing feelings for a man she'd initially approached as a subject. "I'd like that," she replied finally. They met at the same cafe near Cary Park, but this time the conversation had nothing to do with work. Finn told her about growing up in Boston, about losing his parents in college and channeling his grief into research that could help others recover from brain injuries. Daisy shared stories of her childhood in Portland, her failed attempt at novel writing before finding her voice in journalism, her love of hiking the Olympic Peninsula. By their third meeting, it was clear they were no longer just friendly acquaintances. When Finn's hand found hers across the table, Daisy didn't pull away. "I know this is complicated," he said softly. "Your professional reputation is solid enough to withstand dating someone I wrote about months ago," she finished. "Besides, I'm transferring to the science and technology desk permanently next week. No more profile pieces." His smile made her heart race. "So we're dating now. I believe that's what people call it when they can't stop thinking about someone and want to spend more time with them." She squeezed his hand. "Unless you have objections." Instead of answering, he leaned across the table and kissed her softly. It was brief but perfect, a promise of something neither had expected to find. The relationship developed naturally from there. They discovered a shared love of quiet mornings, intense debates about technology ethics, and terrible science fiction movies. Daisy appreciated Finn's brilliant mind and the way he really listened when she spoke. Finn admired her integrity and the way she saw through surface appearances to what mattered. 3 months into their relationship, the media finally caught on. A photo of them hiking together appeared in a Seattle lifestyle magazine with the caption, "Tech mogul finds love with reporter who cleared his name." Daisy braced for professional backlash, but her editor simply said, "Your work speaks for itself. Just keep your personal life and reporting separate going forward." Finn's response to the publicity was unexpected. "Does it bother you that some people will think you wrote that article because of how you felt about me?" They were sitting on the deck of his Lake Washington home watching the sunset. Daisy considered his question carefully. "I wrote that article because the evidence supported your side. How I felt came after." She turned to face him. "Does it bother you that some people will think you're with me because I helped restore your reputation?" He reached for her hand. "I'm with you because in my darkest moment, when everyone was ready to believe the worst about me, you looked for the truth. And then I got to know the amazing woman behind that integrity." 6 months into their relationship, Daisy moved into Finn's house. A year later, on a rainy Seattle evening much like the night they'd first had coffee together, he proposed on the deck overlooking the lake. "When my world was falling apart, you were the only one who took the time to see beyond accusations," he said, down on one knee with a simple but elegant diamond ring. "You brought truth back into my life, and then you brought love. I want to spend the rest of my life building something even more meaningful than any company a life with you." Tears mixed with raindrops on Daisy's face as she said yes. Their wedding was small but joyful, held at the cafe where they'd had their first real conversation. Dr. Eleanor Reyes gave a toast that made everyone laugh. To the reporter who asked the hard questions and the CEO who finally found the right answers. 2 years later, as Daisy sat in their home office putting the finishing touches on her first book, an exploration of ethics in technology journalism, she felt Finn's hands on her shoulders. "How's it going?" he asked, massaging the tension from her neck. Almost done. She leaned back against him. Just in time, too. Her hand drifted to her slightly rounded belly. At 4 months pregnant, they had just learned they were having a little girl. Finn knelt beside her chair, placing his hand over hers. She's going to have her mother's curiosity and determination. And her father's compassion and brilliance, Daisy added, kissing him softly. As the rain tapped gently against the windows of their home, Daisy reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A scandal, a defense, an investigation that led to unexpected love. What had begun as a professional pursuit of truth had become the most authentic relationship either of them had ever known. "What are you thinking about?" Finn asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "How sometimes the most beautiful stories come from the most difficult chapters," she replied. "And how grateful I am that I was stubborn enough to look beyond the headlines." He smiled, the warmth in his blue eyes still making her heart skip after all this time. "I'm just grateful you were brave enough to defend a stranger when it wasn't the popular thing to do." "Well," she said, pulling him closer, "that stranger turned out to be worth it." Outside, the Seattle skyline glittered through the rain, much as it had the night they'd first truly seen each other. But now, instead of uncertainty and accusations, their horizon was filled with the promise of the family they were building, a future neither could have imagined when a reporter stood up for the truth about a millionaire in disgrace. Their story, Daisy thought as Finn's lips met hers, was proof that sometimes the most powerful technology wasn't found in laboratories or silicon circuits, but in the human capacity to look beyond appearances and find the truth worth fighting for. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that fight led you straight to love.